This ranking is going to be pretty divisive. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another MCU ranking. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania just hit theaters, so that means there are now 31 of these movies to rank, so I won't give my full in-depth thoughts on every single one of these movies. But before I get into this thing, hit that like button. Let me know down below your ranking of the MCU movies. Where would you place Quantumania? That's going to be the hot topic of today in the comments, I'm sure. And be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be notified for my future MCU videos coming throughout the rest of the week. Let's go ahead and get into this ranking. Coming in dead last for me at number 31 is Thor: Love and Thunder, the worst MCU movie and painfully unfunny. And that's all I have to say about that. At number 30 is Thor: The Dark World, one of the most forgettable, just hard to rewatch MCU movies. It's such a snooze, but the Thor-Loki relationship is what sort of saves it, if anything. Number 29 for me is Captain Marvel, another one of those MCU movies that's just so forgettable. The highlights here are Nick Fury and Goose. Captain Marvel as a character is so wishy-washy throughout the film, and it just doesn't hold up. The villain is really weak. Number 28 for me is The Incredible Hulk, a movie from early on in the MCU that really feels so detached from the MCU. It's unfortunate. My biggest wish is that Mark Ruffalo actually played Hulk from the very beginning. Would have had a little more continuity, but the post-credit scene here with Tony Stark, chef's kiss. It's my favorite part of this movie. Number 27 for me is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, a huge disappointment from last year and Phase 4. I thought this movie would have functioned better as a Doctor Strange movie. It felt more like a Wanda Doctor Strange hybrid, never really had a clear direction. They teased going into this mad, insane multiverse, and they barely even scratched the surface of what was possible. They set up a lot of cool things with the Illuminati, boom, got rid of them like that, and it had a pretty underwhelming third act in my opinion. But number 26 for me is Eternals, a movie that I love the characters from. That's the best part of this movie. Icarus is one of the best written characters from Phase 4, I would say, but I really enjoyed, Druid, Kingo, Makari, the list goes on, Phastos. I really like the characters, but the movie itself was way too grand for its own good. It tried to introduce these like world-shifting concepts into the MCU, and it was almost like too little too late. Not sure if we're going to see these characters again, but I am down, especially after the post-credit scene with Harry Styles. But number 25 on my list is Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I think it gets a little too much hate. It's not fantastic by any means, but I just love the character of Scott Lang so much that watching him, be quippy and Luis have these fun moments, it's just fun. But number 24 for me is going to be Iron Man 3, a movie that still to this day disappointed me. I remember going to see this opening day, walked out of the theater disappointed, couldn't stand what they did with the Mandarin reveal and how they faked us all out. Now, my favorite MCU character of all time is Iron Man, but this movie just never really does it for me. It's not one that I go back and rewatch all that much. Number 23 for me is Thor, the first movie from 2011. This movie, again, a little overhated in my opinion. I enjoy this more than Dark World and Love and Thunder. It's that trope we've seen a million times, the fish out of water story, but the Thor-Loki relationship yet again carries here. Odin, played by Anthony Hopkins, great performance. It's not as rewatchable as a lot of the movies on this list, but I do think it gets the short end of the stick. It's a solid Phase 1 movie. But number 22 on my list, sort of a hot take, Iron Man 2, a movie that's usually at the very bottom of people's rankings. My love for Tony Stark definitely plays a part in the placement here on my ranking, but Iron Man 2 is a movie that I have so much nostalgia for. I remember it's the first MCU movie I ever saw in theaters, and I was just so amped to be there. To this day, it contains a top 3, maybe top 2 badass suit-up scene for Tony Stark. The movie's trying to set up the Avengers. It's got too many villains and honestly too much going on, but Black Widow is introduced in this movie, and there's a lot of memorable, iconic moments from Phase 1 of the MCU. But coming in at number 21 for me is Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, a movie that I think is solid. Like, from here on out, the movies are solid to great to fantastic. There are just so many MCU movies that some of these had to be lower on the list. Wakanda Forever did the best it could at continuing the legacy of Chadwick Boseman. I think that's a mighty role to fill, but I did enjoy Namor. He was a very fleshed out villain. I think the movie is way too damn long for its own good, and at times it loses focus. But Riri Williams as Ironheart was the standout to me personally, and I enjoyed seeing Shuri take on the mantle. But the first Black Panther is my 20th favorite MCU movie. It's just superior. Chadwick Boseman carries this movie. You've also got the dynamic between him and Killmonger, a very solid hero-villain dynamic there. I just think it's better than the first movie. Hot take alert, because number 19 for me is Black Widow, another movie that people love to crap on. I really don't care. I enjoy this movie. Florence Pugh as Yelena, David Harbour as Red Guardian. Both of those are scene stealers for me, but it's the first time we get to see Black Widow have her own standalone movie, which was honestly long overdue, and we get to see her family backstory. They dive so much into that. It really makes me appreciate Nat even more, but the sisterhood relationship between Nat and Yelena carries the movie because the villains are very weak. Taskmaster and Dreykov, awful villains that have the most bare bones motives you could think of, but the family dynamic is so strong here, and it's just like a vibe that this is almost comfort movie for me. But number 18 for me on my list is the original Doctor Strange from 2016. To this day, one of the more visually impressive MCU movies, a very solid origin for Stephen Strange. And I haven't rewatched this since episode 4 of What If, but I think it would definitely make me appreciate it even more. It's better than Multiverse of Madness in my opinion. But number 17 for me is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. If you've watched these videos lately, you'll notice this one's slowly creeping its way up. I think I was way too hard on this movie because it does contain one of the better third acts that I can think of. You've got the Yondu sacrifice, the whole ego reveal was really well executed, and I just love these characters and the family vibe of Guardians so much. It's got a bop of soundtrack that I constantly listen to. I have both Guardians 1 and 2, their soundtracks compiled into the same playlist, and so I dig this movie. Granted, I don't rewatch it as much. I feel like I sort of hopped on this hatred bandwagon for Guardians 2 because I remember enjoying the movie in theaters. I said it's not as good as the first, so when I rewatch it in a few months to prep for Guardians 3, this could make its way even higher on my MCU ranking come May. But number 16 on my list is Avengers Age of Ultron, a movie that, again, gets way too much hate in my opinion. Is it the weakest Avengers movie? Yes, but it's almost impossible to compare it to the one that started it all and the epic Part 1 and 2 conclusion to the Avengers films. It's the odd man out when it comes to the Avengers. It's the only time we really get to see them as an actual family. They're all hanging out with Hawkeye at his house and we get to see them have family conflict. I dig it. It introduces Wanda, it introduces Pietro. We get an epic third act battle between Ultron and all of the bots, and we also get Vision. This is a very important film in moving the MCU forward towards the conclusion of the Infinity Saga, and I never understood the hate for it. It's pretty easy to rewatch as well. Number 15 for me, pretty much right in the middle of this ranking, is Captain America: The First Avenger. This is like the classic MCU movie. This and Avengers and Iron Man are the three that I think of as the ones that started it all. This is a movie that takes place way back in the day, as Captain America is not in present day, he's actually in World War II, and because of that, it makes it even more memorable. We get to see Cap and Bucky's relationship before Bucky falls off the train. Red Skull might be the most cliche villain out there, but he is still solid. And again, it has that early MCU feel that I'm pretty nostalgic for looking back on it. And the ending, oh man, it's heartbreaking, but he finally got that dance, so I appreciate the end of this movie even more after the ending of Endgame. But number 14 for me, the movie you've all been waiting for me to talk about, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, pretty much like right in the middle of my ranking, I would say. It's like a little bit on the, upper middle part. This is like one of, if not the lowest rated movies on Rotten Tomatoes as it stands right now, and people continue to hate on it, and I personally don't understand it, but that's the beauty of it all. We all get to have our own opinions on these movies. I had an absolute blast with Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. I think Jonathan Majors as Kang is the future of the MCU. It's very evident watching this movie. Just the terror that he instilled in me when I was sitting in my chair watching this movie gives me chills. I think he's going to definitely be able to top Thanos in terms of a villain, but the movie itself has a great family core with this story of Scott rekindling his relationship with Cassie. You've got Hope and Janet and Hank's storyline where Janet is essentially withholding information from them and they have to all rethink their relationship there. It's got a great family story. It takes place in this visually trippy quantum realm that was just this wacky world to take a trip into. And I thought it had some great, hilarious callbacks to the MCU that a lot of people aren't liking. It's an Ant-Man movie. They've all been cheesy so far. This movie's cheesy. It's no exception. Now, it has its goofy moments that don't work for me fully, but I dug the hell out of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. I enjoyed it more than any of the MCU movies we got in the year 2022. So this is a great way to kickstart Phase 5 in my eyes, and I have a bunch of videos talking about it. A spoiler review I'll link up above. Let me know what you think of the movie down below and where you would place it on your MCU ranking. But coming in at number 13 for me, another hot take, Spider-Man Far From Home. I think this is the most overhated Spider-Man movie. Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio is a wonderful villain here, and the dynamic he has with Peter Parker is great. We get more of the MJ love story here. The final battle with the drones on the bridge in London, all that's great, and it's a very memorable Spider-Man movie to me. Not sure why this one gets hated on so much. Obviously, the character of Brad is a loser, and there are moments like that that don't work. Far From Home is a very fun entry in the Spider-Man trilogy in the MCU. Number 12 on my list is going to be Thor Ragnarok, a movie that sort of slips on my ranking each time I talk about it. The humor definitely does not hold up on rewatch, but the story itself is enjoyable. It's got some iconic moments, the Thor v Hulk gladiator fight, Thor coming down on the bridge while Immigrant Song plays. Those are banger moments that make this movie more memorable than a lot on this list. Number 11 on my list, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. It slipped just a little bit in my ranking since last time. Still have a blast with this movie. It's a side of the MCU we don't often see. It's action-packed from start to finish. The humor is actually a hit here, and it's cool to go into Tal Owen and see this fantasy side of the MCU. I hope we get more Shang-Chi movies down the road, because this is a character that I really want to explore more of. But bringing us into my top 10 is Ant-Man, a movie that has made its way up on my list recently. This was right outside the top 10. It is now solid at my number 10. Scott Lang is one of the most lovable characters in the entire MCU, and I didn't think this would work for me. I actually saw it at a drive-in theater when it came out in 2015, and I just remember just being like, wow, this is so much fun. And it's honestly one of the more unique MCU movies. It's crazy that they made the character of Ant-Man so compelling, and the fact that he has a trilogy now is really impressive. But number 9 on my list is Spider-Man Homecoming, a top-tier Spider-Man movie in my eyes, and one that features a top-tier elite MCU villain in Michael Keaton's Vulture. The scene where it's revealed that he is Liz's father, when Peter walks up to the front door to pick up Liz for Homecoming, "You must be Peter." That is one of my favorite lines in the MCU. And of course, the car ride scene when he is driving them and he discovers that, Peter is Spider-Man. Ooh, it gives me chills every time. Vulture is one of the most memorable MCU villains. I hope we get to see more of him. I know the whole Morbius thing exists, which is just unfortunate, but I'd love to see him come back in the MCU. It's also just got the coming of age feel, and that's one of my favorite genres. But number 8 on my list is Avengers, the one that started it all in terms of these team-up movies in the MCU. Little did we know how far we would come, because this movie was so epic at the time. We didn't even know Infinity War and Endgame were coming out. So cool to go to the theater and watch a team-up of superheroes, which looking back on it, it's a little small scale now, but I still have all the nostalgia for this movie, and it still holds up in my opinion, despite many saying it doesn't age well. I strongly disagree. Number 7 on my list is Captain America the Winter Soldier, another one of those movies that's pretty much in everyone's top 10. I think it's slightly overrated. I don't think it's the greatest comic movie ever or the best MCU movie, but it still is in my top 10. It's got fantastic action. The Russo brothers direct the hell out of it, and we really get to dive into that Cap and Bucky relationship. But I think one of the more slept on aspects of this movie is the fact that Sam Wilson is introduced, and he is now Captain America. Gotta represent. He's the man, and he really is a scene stealer in this movie. But number 6 on my list is Guardians of the Galaxy. This is a classic MCU movie. I think most people have this in their top 5 or top 10. It's got the best soundtrack in the entire MCU, though I hope Guardians 3 can give it a run for its money. It's one of the most rewatchable, and it's a movie that just stands alone as great. Like, a lot of people out there probably just like Guardians of the Galaxy and haven't even explored the rest of the MCU. It's because we get this unconventional family and their chemistry just ends up working. You fall in love with the characters, and while it has sort of a generic villain in Ronan, it's all about the family dynamic of the Guardians here, and it just clicks. This movie is an absolute blast. All right, getting into my top 5, we've got Spider-Man No Way Home, a movie that I will always cherish. We got to see all 3 Spider-Men swinging on the big screen together. The initial shock factor of seeing the 3 Spider-Men on screen together has worn off a little bit, but it still works in terms of the story as they serve such a great purpose in Tom Holland's Peter Parker's arc. I don't know if that was grammatically correct, but you get what I'm trying to say. Number 4 on my list is the one that started it all, Iron Man. I will always adore this movie. It will always be pretty high here on my MCU ranking. I've seen it countless times, but it is a perfect origin story in my mind, especially the first 30 minutes. Wow, when he comes out of that cave with the Mark I suit, we knew that a star had been born. Number 3 is going to be Captain America Civil War, a movie that tackles conflict better than any in the MCU. It gives us the airport action scene, the final reveal that Bucky killed Tony's parents, and then the fight was on. The drama there, unmatched in the MCU. This is an elite movie in this franchise, but my runner-up is Avengers Endgame, the epic conclusion to the Infinity Saga, and a perfect film in my mind. And I still rewatch this movie. I don't know if anything, not even Avengers Secret Wars, will top the final hour of this movie in terms of pure epic culmination of everything I've loved for multiple years of my life. It's perfection, just like my number 1 spot, Avengers Infinity War, the most rewatchable MCU movie in my eyes. The dark ending and part 1 of this epic conclusion. It does such a great job of handling all these different character groupings, from Thor and Rocket and Groot to, you know, Tony and Peter and Doctor Strange, to all the other characters like Cap and Black Panther and Hulk. Thanos is just too powerful here, and they really assert his dominance over the course of this movie. People die. In fact, a lot of people die. Half of humanity is wiped away, as well as half of our Avengers, and it just felt so hopeless as the movie ended, but it had my excitement higher than ever as we headed into Avengers Endgame, because this movie is incredible, and Infinity War and Endgame will always be the highest point of the MCU in my mind. But that does it for my ranking of all 31 MCU movies. Let me know yours in the comments down below. Where's Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania place? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Check out all my MCU content regarding Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. I'll put some links up above and down below, so be sure to check that out. Hit that like button again, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. I have a few more MCU videos coming out throughout the rest of the week and weekend. But thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, see you guys later.